I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. All I have is the information that I have of today, right? If there's anything that I think anybody can do as they're going down this path is arm yourself with as much information, knowledge, and wisdom as you can early onset. Not where over analysis becomes paralysis, but where that information causes you to act faster, right? I think that's definitely a key thing. We started off in a very nonprofit, in one arm, and then a real estate like section in another arm. It wasn't until we became very clear about what we really wanted to focus on in the business and what we really cared about in the business, that we were going to make it happen. And so that focus for us just kind of allowed us to narrow in and look at, okay, hey, let's do double occupancy co-living. We can reduce the amount of the rate of rent for students to actually live by like 25%, and also provide them an amenity of incubation and startup acceleration in that regard. And so from a standpoint of will we change anything, I would say no, because Thomas, like the reality is we probably would have never met if we would have. I probably would have never been in Techstars, and those realities just wouldn't take place. So it's kind of hard to look back and say, hey, I would have taken out this piece. But
yeah, I have a similar answer, Dom, in that if anyone's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur and you haven't read Lean Startup, do it. But the methodology therein is build, measure, learn. And so operate under the assumption that you're wrong from day one, and take the feedback loop from whatever information you're gathering in the operation of your business to inform those decisions moving forward. But I mean, listen, we're wrong all the time. The question is, how are you taking that information and learning from it? Relative to the business model that we set up from the get-go, I think largely it's been pretty spot on. But at the same time, this is an enormous problem. I mean, our mission is to solve the affordable housing crisis one room at a time. And I can't say that I fully underestimated the gravity of that problem. But I mean, we could be 15 different individual businesses based on what we're doing today. And so I think I would love it if my life were a little bit simpler than it is. But at the same time, you acknowledge it's just a big problem, and you do the best that you can. You learn, and you keep putting one foot in front of the other, and that's really all there is to it. It's not worth dwelling on the regrets.
Yeah. I mean, I have similar and slightly different thoughts, and I'll give you an example of my trajectory and social impact. So I came up with the idea for our original mission of Goodie Nation, which was to do hackathons for good. And to be clear, my original intention was to do it one time, one day, one time. This is December 2013. A month later, I get into a program in San Francisco. I get the $1 billion person goal. And then on March 1st, I launched our hackathon for good. And it immediately exploded. So you're talking about March 1st, and then by the end of the year, we were doing it. We were getting contacted by Care USA, by Google, by Ford, by Coca-Cola. And, roughly 12, 15 months later, we were on a pathway to bringing in $1 million in revenue. That was not the original intention. My intention was to simply do these hackathons for good that would span anywhere from 24 or actually 8 to 36 hours. And so what developed, at least for me as a leader, was essentially two rocket ships and two distinct really business models. One are kind of public facing, we're going to do what we want to do. And then the other one was where companies would call us to do hackathons and innovation labs, design thinking sessions internal to them. And so it was literally like being on a rocket ship that had split apart and was going in different directions. Like from a brain standpoint, for me, it was just super, super, super tough. And I had to make the decision. Well, I made the decision to completely break off into another company to handle all the private work from large companies and let Goodie Nation be this nonprofit that focused on doing our own programming. If I had to a point that the Atticus made, if I had to do it all over again, I would have been much, much more focused and said no 1,000 times more. because what we're able to do can be pointing in a lot of different directions, and it caused honestly a lot of different problems. I mean, yeah, we were bringing in money, but ultimately from a focus standpoint, no one really knew what we were doing. And I'm not saying that we haven't created a lot of good in the world, because I do believe that, but I think things could have been a little bit different. So I say all of that to say, like the normal pathway of building the companies, especially today, is the lean startup method. But sometimes you can come out of the box almost with product market fit, whether you meant to or not. And I've seen it with other social impact companies, and they have the same issue of having so much interest. Like, you just come out hot, you hit the jackpot from day one, and they have so much inbound interest that it actually ends up crushing them. So say no more, be focused, and that'll put you in a better pathway to not only success for your company, but success for the world.
If you know you want to create a sustainable, profitable business, and you know you want to create good in the world, then create a revenue model that aligns those two interests. For us as a marketplace model, that's reasonably easy in that we have a core target of a population where if we can house them, period, and create a better, more stable housing option, then we've achieved some level of social impact. And our revenue model is such that when those people are in those homes, we start to collect revenue as a percentage of rent moving forward. And so that's maybe easier on in a marketplace model where if we are not adding value, we are not getting paid. And so it behooves us to go find areas where we can actually add value. And I don't anticipate that model changing with any degree of substance. The only thing that might change moving forward is how we further align incentives inside the home. So how do we encourage people to save more money, to stay a longer period of time, to adapt better financial behaviors, and do we adopt like dynamic pricing so that people who only want to move in for a week or two pay a higher price than those people who say they want to stay there for 6 months. And that's the, I think, iteration that we may move towards. But by and large, as long as you're aligning incentives so that you're only getting paid to add value, and by adding value, you're creating social impact.
As a user experience architect, it's something that I just think about pretty much all the time when we're kind of thinking about our customers and what we're doing. I'll provide a couple of notes, a couple of bullet points for you all. So as a social, if you're thinking about being a social impact, my humble opinion would say just study the basic practice tools and methodologies of just the regular business world, right? Those tools are not going to change. It's just that your focus and mission is just a little bit different, but those tools help out in a million of ways. Second, I would say if you are not doing your best to really like understand how the customer's behavior changes and shifts, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? You're not going to be able to actually focus on your mission, really begin to impact people where it really matters. There's some good friends of mine who run a company by the name of Divvy Up. They were highly focused on providing, I forgot what they wanted to provide at first, but they wanted to help the homeless population, right? And they thought the homeless population needed some type of food or some type of clothing. What was interesting is that as they started to speak more with the population, they understood that the homeless population really needed socks. That was the main problem that they were dealing with. And, they focused in on that market and started providing socks, buy one, give one, right? Same thing as Tom Shoes. A lot of people don't know this. Warby Parker actually operates in that same model as well. And they just took time to actually understand the customer. And then lastly, I would say, if you're not kind of mapping out, like doing customer journey maps and understanding the touch point of value exchange, I think you're doing yourself a disservice as well. It's you want to make sure that you just implement those core basic disciplines that every other pre-accelerator, accelerator, incubator, classroom is really providing you all in order to actually implement those things, because you end up finding so many different insights. And as people who are social impact founders, I would say that it behooves you twice as much as the individual that's not, in order to understand like who you're serving, so therefore you can understand how to implement your mission, right? And how to really safeguard it as you continue to grow and scale, because those things are just going to be vitally important.
If could I actually just kind of piggyback off a point that I was reminded of hearing Dominick's answer. So I think it's vitally important if you're going to be a social entrepreneur to truly, truly, truly believe in your theory around how you're going to create this change, and more importantly, why the ultimate, like, what is your actual problem? So for me, why I started doing those hackathons for good is really goes back to the community story I told in the beginning, was that I believe that we have, when I say we, the world, have everything that we need to create the change that we seek. However, the ecosystem of change-making organizations is just highly inefficient, like super, super inefficient. And one of the reasons, well, there's like a few reasons why. Sometimes it's around ego of the people creating the change, and that's a whole nother workshop. But the other one is around communication and stuff like that. And so what ends up happening in both of those scenarios is that people go off and create new organizations as opposed to making the ones that are already doing great work better. So for me, the one thing that really upsets me in this world, well, there's two things. One is a waste of time, but the other one is around the waste of potential. Like, that is what truly, truly powers a lot of the decisions that I make. And so we started doing these hackathons for good around that. And so I'm solely dedicated on solving this ecosystem efficiency problem as it relates to social impact. And so it's evolved over the years, from nonprofits now going to social entrepreneurs and helping them to become better. In many cases, their customers or clients or nonprofits or other change-making organizations, and obviously in some cases end users of those in need. So I've seen way too many social entrepreneurs not truly understand what problem they're really, like, what are they really solving. And in some cases, the problems around, like, what you're focusing on goes back to what you experienced in childhood. So Dominick's story around, and I'll kind of end here, around the company focused on socks for the homeless. I've seen that go sideways 1,000 different times. They start off by providing, not with this company, socks, and it goes to something else, and then something else, and it's a big game of whack-a-mole. And then next thing you know, the company goes out of business. And guess who suffers? The people that they were looking to help in the first place.
Yeah, you have to be focused. I think, George, your point there is spot on. And also too, just as a element of thinking that I've seen in this space a lot is, oftentimes when you think that you are doing good, it gives you a license to do bad. What do I mean by this? It gives you a license to, like, not show up and not be excellent, not be efficient, not be effective, not do the work, not do the homework, because you're doing good. And I think that's something that really just has to be addressed in this space. I think the only reason why Atticus and Joey have really made it as far as they have and still going to new heights is because they're students of the game, right? And when you're a student of the game, you're communicating that, hey, you take the mission that you have personally serious, and that you're focused on it, right? You're focused on that problem, and whatever way that your business needs to shift or change in order to begin to continue to address that problem, you'll make those hard decisions in order to make that happen. So it's not a license to not show up and be excellent. Like, come to the table ready to rock and roll.